Imagine this for a moment. Someone tries to provoke you, and nothing happens. No tight chest, no racing thoughts, no urge to explain yourself, just silence, calm, clarity. That state, being mentally untouchable, is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. It doesn't mean you're cold. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means your peace is no longer up for negotiation. In today's world, chaos is loud. Opinions are endless. Everyone wants a reaction from you, a reply, a defense, an emotional response. And most people live their lives being pulled in every direction by that noise. But Buddhism, especially Zen teachings, offers a radically different path. It teaches that true power is not found in control over others, but in mastery over yourself. Silence in this sense is not weakness. Silence is discipline. Calm is not passivity. Calm is presence. This way of living is not a fantasy reserved for monks or retreats in the mountains. It is a trainable skill, a mental posture, a daily practice. The Buddha didn't teach escape from life. He taught how to stand firmly inside it without being shaken. When you stop reacting to every comment, every judgment, every inconvenience, something subtle but profound happens. You reclaim your energy. You stop bleeding attention into places that cannot nourish you. Overthinking begins to loosen its grip. The constant need to explain yourself slowly fades. Zen Buddhism reminds us that not every sound deserves an echo. Not every challenge requires a battle. And not every misunderstanding needs your clarification. The goal is not to become numb. The goal is to become clear. Clear enough to recognize what matters and what doesn't. Clear enough to feel emotions without being owned by them. Clear enough to choose response over reaction. Life will not stop testing you. People will still misunderstand you. Situations will still be unfair at times. But the difference is this: they no longer enter your inner sanctuary uninvited. Your calm becomes your boundary. Your silence becomes your statement. Your steadiness becomes your power. This is the quiet strength Zen speaks of, a mind so grounded that storms pass through without leaving damage behind. And once you taste that kind of inner stillness, you realize something important. The world hasn't changed. You have. We begin by going to the first part of today's video. Not everything deserves your energy. Most of us were never taught this. We grew up believing that every challenge needs a response, every criticism needs defending, and every misunderstanding needs explaining. But Zen Buddhism quietly teaches the opposite, that your energy is sacred, and not everything is worthy of touching it. Not every argument deserves your voice. Not every comment deserves your attention. And not every person deserves access to your inner world. Your mental, emotional, and spiritual energy is not infinite. It is your life force. Every time you engage in meaningless conflict, every time you replay a toxic conversation in your mind, every time you worry about things beyond your control, that energy is being drained, often without you even noticing. Imagine your energy as a bowl of clear water. Each unnecessary reaction is like dropping dirt into that bowl. One grain may seem harmless, but over time, the water becomes cloudy. And when your inner water is no longer clear, even small problems begin to feel heavy. Zen does not teach withdrawal from life. It teaches discernment. The wisdom lies not in avoiding everything, but in choosing wisely where your attention flows, because attention is energy, and where your energy goes, your life follows. Think about how many times you've reacted automatically, replying to a message you didn't need to answer, defending yourself to someone who was never listening, or arguing with a person committed to misunderstanding you. Did it bring peace? Or did it leave you feeling heavier, more exhausted, more scattered? Before reacting, Zen invites a pause. A quiet question asked inwardly. Is this worth my peace? Will this help me grow, or will it drain me? Is this aligned with the person I am becoming? These questions are not meant to judge. They are meant to protect. Because when you give your energy away impulsively, you don't just lose calm, you lose direction. You begin living reactively, pulled by external noise rather than guided by inner clarity. The modern world is designed to provoke. News, social media, opinions, conflicts, all competing for your emotional response. Zen practice in daily life is learning how to step back, breathe, and decide consciously. This does not make you weak. It makes you sovereign. There is quiet strength in not reacting. There is dignity and restraint, and there is deep confidence in knowing that you don't need to prove yourself to preserve your worth. When you stop responding to nonsense, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes sharper, your heart becomes lighter, your presence becomes grounded. People may notice or they may not, but that is no longer the point. The less you react to what does not matter, the more energy you have for what truly does: your growth, your peace, your purpose. Zen masters often compare this to guarding a flame in the wind. You don't curse the wind, you simply shield the flame. Your calm is that flame, and your awareness is the hand that protects it. So remember this: choosing not to engage is not avoidance. It is wisdom in motion. It is saying, my peace is more valuable than this momentary disturbance. And as you practice this, day by day, you'll realize something quietly revolutionary. You are no longer living at the mercy of everything that happens around you. You are living from the center of yourself. When you begin to protect your energy, something quietly shifts inside you. You realize that peace is not maintained by avoiding life, but by choosing how you meet it. And that awareness naturally leads us into the next layer of mastery. So now, we move into the next part of today's content: the power of the pause, responding instead of reacting. Most suffering in human life does not come from what happens to us. It comes from how fast we respond to it. A reaction is immediate. It's emotional. It's driven by the ego's need to defend, to prove, to strike back, or to escape discomfort. Someone says something sharp, and before you even realize it, your body tightens, your mind races, and words spill out that you later regret. That is reaction. It happens so quickly that it feels automatic, almost uncontrollable. But Zen Buddhism teaches something radical and deeply freeing. Between what happens and what you do, there is always a space, a sacred pause. This pause may last only a breath, but within that breath lies choice, and where there is choice, there is freedom. When that pause is lost, suffering begins. Not because the situation was unbearable, but because the mind was hijacked. The emotion took the wheel, and the moment passed without awareness. A response, on the other hand, is conscious. It is slower. It is rooted in presence rather than impulse. Responding does not mean suppressing emotion. Zen never asks you to deny what you feel. Instead, it teaches you to see the emotion without becoming it. Anger arises, you notice it. Fear appears, you acknowledge it. Hurt surfaces, you allow it. But you do not let these emotions speak for you. One simple practice changes everything. When you feel triggered, take one full breath. Just one. That breath creates space between the stimulus and your action. It anchors you back into the body, out of the storm of thought. In that moment, you are no longer trapped inside the emotion, you are observing it. Zen often compares emotions to passing weather. Storms may come, but the sky itself remains untouched. You are not the storm, you are the sky. From this space, clarity emerges. You may still choose to speak, you may choose to set a boundary, or you may choose silence. But whatever you choose, it comes from awareness, not reflex. Here is a quiet truth most people never realize. Stillness can be more powerful than any reaction. When you remain calm while someone else is losing control, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer being pulled into their emotional field. You become grounded, centered, unmovable. And the person who holds calm holds authority not over others, but over themselves. This is not about winning arguments. It's about preserving dignity. It's about not handing your inner peace to circumstances that do not deserve it. Zen masters say, if you control your reaction, you control your life. Training this takes practice. You will fail sometimes. You will react, and that's okay. Awareness grows through repetition, not perfection. Each time you pause instead of react, you strengthen a new pathway in the mind, one that leads toward clarity rather than chaos. Over time, people may notice something about you. You feel steady. You don't escalate drama. You don't rush to defend yourself. And most importantly, you don't abandon yourself in moments of pressure. That is real power. Because when you learn to respond rather than react, life no longer drags you by the emotions. You meet it with calm eyes and a steady heart. And in that pause, that single breath, you reclaim yourself. When you learn to pause instead of react, something subtle becomes clear. Even in silence, emotions still arise. Calm does not mean the absence of feeling, it means not being ruled by it. And that realization gently leads us to the next layer of inner mastery. So now, we will move into the next part of today's content, becoming the witness mastering emotional detachment. Emotions are not the enemy. Anger, sadness, fear, disappointment, these are natural human experiences. Zen Buddhism never asks you to reject them, suppress them, or pretend they don't exist. That would only create tension inside the mind. Emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or distant. It does not mean shutting your heart down. It means learning to stay present with what you feel without letting it define who you are. Zen offers a simple but powerful image. Emotions are like a river. They flow, they rise, they fall. But you are not the river. You are the one sitting on the bank, watching the water pass. Most people jump straight into the river. They identify with the current. I am angry. I am anxious. I am broken. And once inside, the emotion carries them wherever it wants, into words, actions, and decisions they later regret. The practice is to step back. When anger arises, instead of becoming it, you gently name it. This is anger. I feel it, but I am not it. That small shift changes everything. By naming the emotion, you create space. The emotion no longer owns you, it becomes an object of awareness. Neuroscience supports this as well. Labeling emotions reduces their intensity. Zen understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Emotions are impermanent. They come and they go. Even the most intense feeling, if observed without resistance, will eventually dissolve. But when you cling to it, replaying the story, feeding the narrative, you keep it alive far longer than it needs to be. Meditation trains this skill directly. When you sit quietly and focus on the breath, emotions naturally surface. Instead of fighting them, you observe. You might silently say, sadness, or fear, or craving, and you return to the breath. Over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to feel emotions fully without drowning in them. This is especially powerful in relationships. When someone hurts you, disappointment or pain may arise, but emotional detachment allows you to respond from clarity rather than wound. You can care deeply without clinging, love without losing yourself, let go without collapsing. Zen teaches that suffering is not caused by emotion itself, but by attachment to emotion. When you believe, this feeling defines me, you tighten around it. But when you remember this is a passing state, the grip loosens. Detachment also means not building your identity around how you feel today. You are not your mood, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. When this understanding deepens, a quiet strength appears. You become calm without being cold. You become strong without being rigid. You remain compassionate without being consumed. You stop expecting others to regulate your emotions for you. You stop needing constant reassurance. You carry a steady center within yourself. And from that center, you meet life openly but not vulnerably exposed. This is not emotional distance. It is emotional maturity. And when you master this art, peace stops feeling fragile. It becomes stable, grounded, and deeply rooted inside you. When you stop identifying with emotions, another attachment quietly reveals itself. It's not anger. It's not fear. It's the hidden need to be understood. And from this awareness, we will move into the next part of today's content, releasing the need to be understood. Not everyone will understand you. And more importantly, not everyone needs to. This truth can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are someone who has learned to explain yourself to survive. Many of us grew up believing that being understood meant being safe, accepted, or loved. So we learn to over-explain, to justify, to clarify again and again. But Zen teaches something quietly radical. Peace does not require agreement. Every person sees the world through their own lens, shaped by past wounds, beliefs, expectations, and unresolved pain. When someone misunderstands you, they are not seeing you. They are seeing the world through themselves. Trying to correct every misunderstanding is like trying to straighten a reflection in moving water. The harder you try, the more distorted it becomes. There is a deep cost to tying your peace to someone else's understanding. The moment you say, I can only be calm if they get me, you hand your inner stability to them. Your emotional state becomes something others control without even knowing it. That is why constant explaining is so exhausting. Not because you lack clarity, but because clarity cannot land in a closed heart. Zen masters often remain silent, not because they had nothing to say, but because words cannot force readiness. Explanation only works when the listener is open. Without that openness, every word becomes friction. Letting go of the need to be understood is not giving up on connection. It is giving up on self-betrayal. There is a quiet freedom in knowing that you understand yourself. You know your heart. You know your intention. You know the path you are walking. That is enough. When someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of explanation will change their mind. Continuing to explain in that situation is like pouring water into a cracked bowl. It drains faster than it fills. Zen invites you to ask a gentle question before explaining. Am I sharing from calm or from the need to defend myself? If it's the second, silence may be wiser. Silence here is not punishment. It is self-respect. There is a difference between being misunderstood and being lost. One affects reputation, the other affects the soul. Zen always prioritizes the soul. When you stop demanding that others validate your truth, you reclaim enormous energy. That energy returns to your breath, your body, your presence. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never happen. You stop carrying invisible arguments in your mind. And something surprising happens. Those who are meant to understand you will, without force, without explanation, without exhaustion. And those who don't no longer disturb your center. Peace does not come from being seen correctly by everyone. Peace comes from seeing yourself clearly. When you know who you are, misunderstanding becomes lighter. It may still sting, but it no longer defines you. You don't shrink, you don't harden, you simply remain. This is not emotional withdrawal, it is inner sovereignty. And when you live this way, you speak less, but your presence says more. You explain less, but your life becomes clearer. Because the deepest form of being understood is understanding yourself. When you no longer need to be understood, another subtle craving becomes visible. Not the need to explain, but the need to be approved. And from this awareness, we will move into the next part of today's content, rooting your worth within living beyond external validation. One of the deepest sources of anxiety is the hunger to be recognized, to be praised, to be seen as enough in someone else's eyes. When your sense of worth depends on external approval, your inner world becomes fragile. A compliment lifts you up, a criticism pulls you down. Your emotional state rises and falls with opinions you cannot control. This is not freedom. This is quiet dependency. Zen Buddhism points directly at this illusion. The Buddha never sought applause. He never needed agreement. His stability came from alignment, not recognition. True inner value is not something others give you. It is something you remember. It begins with knowing who you are beneath roles and labels, not who you perform as, but who you are when no one is watching. It continues with clarity about the values you choose to live by: honesty, compassion, restraint, awareness. When your actions align with your values, something profound happens. You begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, the noise of praise and blame loses its grip. Modern psychology echoes this ancient insight. Self-worth built externally is unstable by nature. Self-worth built internally becomes resilient. Zen offers simple, grounded practices to return your power inward. Self-reflection is one of them. Not harsh judgment, but honest seeing. At the end of the day, instead of asking, "Did they like me?" you ask quieter, stronger questions. Did I act with wisdom today? Was I honest with myself? Did I respond with awareness instead of impulse? These questions shift the center of authority back to you. Meditation deepens this process. Sitting with your breath, you learn to observe thoughts of comparison and craving without feeding them. You notice how often the mind asks, "How do I look?" instead of, "How am I being?" Writing is another doorway. When you journal, you give your inner voice space to speak without interruption. Over time, you begin to hear a steadier tone, less reactive, more grounded. When you validate yourself consistently, something unexpected happens. Compliments still feel pleasant, but they no longer define you. Criticism may still sting, but it no longer shakes your foundation. You stop living like a leaf blown by social winds. You become rooted. Zen teaches that a tree with deep roots does not fear storms. It bends, but it does not break. When your value comes from within, you don't chase recognition. You don't perform for approval. You don't shrink to be accepted. You simply live. And paradoxically, this quiet self-respect often earns more genuine respect from others, not because you seek it, but because you no longer need it. This is inner dignity. When you stop outsourcing your worth, anxiety softens, comparison fades. Life becomes less about proving and more about being. And from that place, peace is no longer fragile. It becomes stable, embodied, and unshakable. When your sense of worth no longer depends on approval, a deeper realization quietly emerges. Peace was never something the world owed you. It was always something you were meant to take responsibility for. And from this realization, we will move into the next part of today's content, taking ownership of inner peace, the discipline of calm. Many people spend their lives waiting for peace to arrive. They believe they will finally feel calm when others behave differently, when problems disappear, when life becomes softer. But this way of living hands your inner world over to forces you cannot control. Zen Buddhism offers a radical shift in perspective. Peace is not something someone gives you. It is not created by favorable conditions. It is an inner discipline, trained moment by moment. The moment you believe your peace depends on others, you give them the power to disturb it. When you outsource your calm to circumstances, even small disruptions can shake you. The Buddha lived in a world filled with chaos, criticism, misunderstanding, and loss. Yet his mind remained steady, not because the world was peaceful, but because his mind was trained to be. This is the heart of responsibility, not blame, not pressure, but ownership. Peace is a practice, not a destination. You don't achieve it once and keep it forever. You return to it again and again, especially when life feels difficult. One of the simplest practices is daily meditation. Even 5 minutes a day changes the quality of your awareness. Sitting quietly, breathing, you remind yourself that stillness is available, regardless of what is happening outside. Meditation is not about escaping reality. It is about strengthening your inner ground so reality does not overwhelm you. Protecting your mental space is another form of responsibility. Just as you would not allow strangers to throw garbage into your home, you learn not to allow constant negativity, gossip, or unnecessary conflict into your mind. This may require saying no, stepping back, choosing silence. This is not avoidance. It is wisdom. When emotions arise, anger, sadness, frustration, responsibility means you stop blaming others for how you feel. Instead of saying, "They made me upset," you gently ask, "What am I attached to right now? Is it control? Recognition? Expectation?" This question is powerful because it brings your power back to you. Once you see the attachment, you can loosen it. And when attachment loosens, suffering softens. Zen teaches that inner peace is like a garden. If you don't tend it daily, weeds grow on their own. The practice is not to eliminate storms, but to strengthen the roots. When you fully accept responsibility for your peace, something liberating happens. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop needing others to change. You stop postponing your calm. You realize that no one can take away what you no longer place in their hands. This does not make you passive or indifferent. It makes you grounded. You respond instead of react. You speak from clarity instead of emotion. You move through difficulty without losing yourself, and there is a quiet strength in this. A presence that steadies others simply by existing. Peace becomes something you carry, not something you chase. When you choose to hold your own calm, the world may still be loud, but inside there is space, there is breath, there is steadiness. And from that place, you no longer fear disturbance. Because peace is no longer fragile, it is yours. When you truly take responsibility for your peace, your relationship with words begins to change. You realize that not everything needs to be said, and not every silence is weakness. From this understanding, we will move into the next part of today's content, the practice of conscious silence, strength without noise. In a world that rewards loudness, instant reactions, and constant expression, silence is often misunderstood. Many people think silence means avoidance, suppression, or fear. But in Zen Buddhism, silence is not an escape. It is a deliberate, intelligent choice. Not every thought deserves a voice. Not every emotion needs to be spoken. Words carry energy. When spoken without awareness, they create ripples that often return as conflict, regret, or misunderstanding. This is why Buddhism teaches right speech, not just speaking truth, but speaking with timing, intention, and compassion. Conscious silence gives you space to observe what is really happening inside you before you act, space to see whether your urge to speak comes from clarity or from ego, fear, or the need to be right. Imagine your mind as a lake. When emotions are stirred, the water becomes cloudy. If you act immediately, you move blindly. But when you choose silence, the water settles. Clarity returns. From that stillness, right action becomes obvious. Silence does not mean you disappear. It means you pause. And in that pause, something powerful happens. When you don't react immediately, others lose their grip over your emotional state. Their words no longer control you. Their provocations no longer pull your strings. This is not passive. This is mastery. Zen masters often taught more through silence than through words. Because silence reveals what noise hides. It exposes intention. It shows whether something truly needs to be said or simply released. There is dignity in silence, a quiet confidence that does not need to prove itself. When you choose not to explain, not to defend, not to argue, you protect your energy. You remain whole. Think of silence as a gatekeeper. It filters what leaves you. It ensures that when you do speak, your words carry weight. Modern psychology also recognizes this power. Emotional regulation improves when we delay response. The nervous system settles. The prefrontal cortex regains control. Wisdom returns to the body. Conscious silence is especially important in moments of conflict. When emotions run high, words spoken in haste often create wounds that take years to heal. Silence, on the other hand, can prevent damage before it begins. This does not mean you never speak up. It means you speak when your words are aligned with truth and calm. When your actions are consistent, they speak louder than explanations ever could. Zen teaches that consistent action is the deepest form of communication. When your behavior reflects integrity, compassion, and steadiness, people understand you without words. Silence at the right moment preserves your dignity. It keeps you from shrinking into reaction or inflating into ego. It allows you to remain centered even when others are not. And here is the quiet truth. When you stop filling every space with words, you begin to hear life more clearly. You hear your intuition. You hear your breath. You hear what truly matters. Conscious silence is not emptiness. It is presence. When practiced daily, it becomes a sanctuary, a place where peace deepens, where energy is conserved, where your inner authority grows stronger. In silence, you are not weak. You are grounded. And grounded people are very hard to disturb. When silence becomes conscious, another truth quietly reveals itself. Nothing you experience is meant to stay forever. And from this understanding, we will move into the next part of today's content. Embracing impermanence. Letting go of outcomes without losing heart. In Buddhism, impermanence is not a theory. It is a living truth. Everything changes: circumstances, emotions, relationships, success, loss. Even the version of you listening to these words is already shifting. Suffering begins when we forget this. We hold tightly to outcomes. We cling to how things should be. We attach our peace to results, to whether someone responds, whether efforts are rewarded, whether life unfolds according to plan. But attachment to outcome is a quiet form of resistance. It is the mind saying, "This must stay," in a world built on change. Zen teaches a different way. Do your part fully, then release the rest. You show up with sincerity. You act with integrity. You give your best effort, and then you let go of how it is received. This is not indifference. This is freedom. When you cling to results, success inflates the ego and failure collapses it. Your sense of worth rises and falls with circumstances. But when you understand impermanence, outcomes lose their power to define you. Success does not make you more worthy. Failure does not make you less. They are events, not identities. Impermanence softens loss. When you truly understand that nothing is permanent, loss still hurts, but it no longer destroys you. You grieve without collapsing. You feel sadness without drowning. Because you know, this too will pass. Trying to control outcomes exhausts the mind. It creates tension, fear, and constant anticipation. Letting go of control does not mean giving up responsibility. It means releasing the illusion that you can manage everything. Zen compares this to holding sand. The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. The gentler your hand, the more remains. Acceptance brings clarity. When you stop fighting reality, your mind becomes lighter. Decisions become cleaner. Actions become wiser. Peace does not come from forcing life into shape. It comes from meeting life as it is, moment by moment. This is why acceptance is not weakness. It is alignment. When you accept impermanence, you stop chasing certainty in an uncertain world. You begin to trust the flow of change. You learn to walk forward without needing guarantees. This does not make you passive. It makes you adaptable, resilient, present. You still care deeply. But you no longer cling desperately, and there is great relief in that. When you let go of outcome, you return to process, to presence, to the simple act of being here now, doing what is right, without bargaining with the future. In this way, peace becomes natural. Not because life is predictable, but because your mind is no longer resisting what cannot be controlled. Impermanence does not take meaning away from life. It gives life its depth. And when you stop fighting change, you discover a calm that moves with you wherever life flows next. True strength is often misunderstood. To live without being shaken is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the quiet courage to remain steady when everything around you is pulling you apart. Peace is not a theory you understand once and keep forever. It is a daily practice. A choice you make again and again in conversations, in silence, in moments when no one is watching. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. It is the one who can breathe deeply while chaos demands reaction. The one who does not rush to defend the ego. The one who can feel emotion without being consumed by it. This kind of peace cannot be taken from you, because it was never given by the world in the first place. When you no longer depend on others to validate your worth, when you stop needing outcomes to confirm your value, when you take full responsibility for your inner state, you become unmovable. The world may remain noisy. People may misunderstand you. Circumstances may rise and fall, but something within you stays quiet, clear, grounded. This is not detachment from life. It is intimacy with reality without fear. You do not need to escape the world to find peace. You need to train the mind that meets it. And this training happens in ordinary moments. Choosing silence over argument. Choosing awareness over impulse. Choosing acceptance over resistance. No one sees these victories, but they shape who you become. Peace does not arrive because life finally becomes kind. It arrives because you have changed the way you meet life. That is why it cannot be stolen. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. What is one situation in your life right now where you could respond with more awareness instead of reaction? Share it in the comments. Not to explain, not to justify, but to acknowledge it for yourself. And if you are on this path of inner discipline, stay with this channel. In the next videos, we will go deeper into how to protect your energy in relationships, how to remain centered under pressure, and how to live with quiet strength in a restless world. Until then, remember, the world does not need you to be louder. It needs you to be steadier.